I suck at French. I really do. It is a very difficult
common thing for
language.
Americans.
It is just, the pronunciation is so different than anything I was used to.
That's true.
So, but I tried, and
That's
it
the
was
most important.
once you graduate college, at
Right.
least in my case, I was broke AF for real. And so it took some time for me to get the finances to where I could have this life. Not everyone needs it. Some people can travel very cheaply.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But it still takes money, actually.
Yeah. But you still have to have something.
Yeah.
And when you're in your early 20s and in debt, it's not a good idea. So wait until you get out of that. So that's what I had to do.
Definitely.
I really like the kind of experiences where you're there for a good chunk of time, where I could even learn different phrases from their native language, and hopefully make friends there, go on some dates if I feel like it, and really be one with the country. And you can't do that when you're just there for a short period of time and let me just see all these main tourist spots. And some people do prefer to travel that way, but it's not my style. I like to give it some time.
Hi, Camille. It's good to have you on the show to share with us your travel experience. You were born in the US, New York City. You've been traveling a little bit, maybe not as much as you wished back then. You went to different states, including Florida.
Yeah, I did live a long time in New York City. I was born in upstate New York.
Right.
Very different from the city. Completely different life.
Right.
So I was born there, early childhood was there, and then I had the bulk of my childhood in Central Florida, outside of Orlando, a little town called St. Cloud. And then I moved to New York City after college, and that is where my travel life really started. I would say in my mid-20s is really when it kicked off, because while I was in New York City, I was connected to a group called Map and Move by my friend Jen Lee started it. And it was a travel group where she curated trips. And that's when I learned about my love for travel. And that's when I made it a priority to incorporate travel into my life, because I was a digital nomad at that point.
How did you come to this decision of becoming a digital nomad?
So my trajectory is it might be quite different than others, because I have been a digital nomad for more than 10 years. And in the beginning, I didn't even know I was a digital nomad, because upon graduating college, I worked for a public relations startup in New York City, and it was a remote job. And at the time, I was thinking, this is really strange. It just wasn't something that existed a lot with companies there. And I had to learn about this digital nomad life on my own, and, how to make sure I stayed motivated and focused when I was working alone a lot. But at the time, this digital nomad phrase wasn't a thing. And I would say maybe a handful of years after that is when I started realizing that it was being talked about more in the press, for example, and among people in New York City. But yeah, for the longest time, I didn't even know that this was my life. And I also wasn't thinking about, I work remotely. Why don't I go to a different country for a bit and just try working from there? It wasn't really on my radar. And also a big part of that was because of finances. Once you graduate college, at least in my case, I was broke AF for real. And so it took some time for me to get the finances to where I could have this life. Not everyone needs it. Some people can travel very cheaply.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But it still takes money, actually.
Yeah, but you still have to have something. And when you're in your early 20s and in debt, it's not a good idea. So wait until you get out of that. So that's what I had to do.
Definitely. So how did it affect your work? Have you been thinking about choosing maybe a career path that is compatible with the digital nomad lifestyle? Or did you just adjust to it?
It just happened that way, because as I work in public relations and I also am a writer. So these skill sets and the work that you do is always online. Sometimes you do have to have in-person meetings, and that's something else. But for the most part, in the PR world and in the writing world, all you need is internet access and a computer.
Right.
And you have your phone. But so I didn't have to do this research into a career change because I just happened to have a career that just worked with the digital nomad life. The digital nomad life found me. I did not seek it. It just fell into place.
What was your first destination as a digital nomad as such?
I remember my first, and this was a solo trip too. I went to Paris, actually.
Oh,
and
great.
You're from France, so I hope so you would appreciate this trip, yes. And yeah, I remember and again, at this time, I was still broke AF. I was, still in my pretty early, maybe it was mid-20s at the time. And I learned about this company that has actually gotten really popular now. It's called Scott's Cheap Flights. Maybe you've heard of it. And I learned about
it rings a bell.
I learned about it from someone in the travel group that I was in, based in New York City. And so basically you get these ridiculously cheap international flights, but the caveat is you have to book it within, say, 3 days.
Right.
You get an email about it, and it's like $200 round trip to wherever city, but you got to book it ASAP. And so I did that. And so I actually flew round trip Paris and then back to the US. I want to say it was $200. It was so cheap. So that was my first place. And I explored Paris and Versailles. And then I also went to England. I had he's still there. I have a friend who lives in Bristol. So I explored Bristol as well on that particular trip, and Bath. I did go to London later in life, not on this trip. But yes, it was France and England were the first two international trips.
Traveling across different places and working, it might happen that you go through low patches. Tell me about some of the challenges that you faced in your digital nomad journey.
Yeah, I would say the most difficult parts of it is having kind of an environment where you feel focused enough, because sometimes when you're going to a new place, you really don't know how the coffee shops are going to be. Sometimes they allow you to work for a little bit, but not all day. If you do like working from coffee shops, you also have to hope that the internet is going to be working wherever you're staying. Definitely have internet wherever you're staying. You must, as it is vital to your work. And luckily, I didn't have anything that was just a complete train wreck in terms of the work, but it can be a struggle kind of finding your groove when you're in a country with a completely different time zone. Right. So, for example, in Spain, it's about 6 hours ahead. So when I was in the US, how I would work is in bulk, say like 9 to 5. That's how it is. Those are your working hours. Maybe you take a lunch break. And here I work more in different segments throughout the day. Mm-hmm. So I wake up and do emails, but people over in the US are still sleeping. So I'll do some work upon waking up. I'll schedule emails because I don't want to actually send them to people in the US because I don't want to wake them up. So, and then I might take a break and go to the gym or do some errands, and then I'll start working again. And then hopefully around this time, people are starting to start work in the United States. And then maybe I'll take a break again for dinner, and then I might have to work a little bit again at night, because a lot of the times with calls that I have in the US, it's usually in the nighttime in Spain, in the evening or in the night, because it's still normal working hours over there. So I found that now when I work, instead of working in this specific bulk of time, it's just pockets of work throughout the day.
Wow.
So,
I think one of the main goals that you try to achieve when you become a digital nomad is certainly freedom. The freedom you find in location independence, for instance. And when at a certain point you find yourself having to be working at night, are you still achieving it?
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
sometimes question that certain freedom?
I adapt very easily, luckily, and I
Okay.
can't, you can't speak for everyone and if they're going to adapt as well, but it's not so bad. The latest would be, at least in Spain, 11 p.m. But if you're in Australia, I mean, the hours are vastly different. So I don't know necessarily how it adjust in that setting. But in Spain, it's not so bad, or in Europe, it's not so bad the way I have it set up now. So no, I feel like I haven't lost motivation. I don't feel left behind. I do think that for me, because I have a public relations business, it is a little harder because I'm not meeting people in person as much in the United States. So do I feel like I am losing more business working and traveling around? Yes, I do. But I still hustle and make sure that I keep putting the word out about, my skill set, the business that I have, that I'm a writer as well. And I'm just constantly pitching myself. So, because you have to maintain the workflow and the money flow. That's what you got to do.
Right. Do you think it's easier for a digital nomad to just run their own business compared to the fact of working for another company? I know we have these types of freelance jobs now, and it's kind of easy to get them. But then practically, do you think it would be more advisable for a digital nomad to think about doing everything on their own, or still being on a remote 9 to 5?
Pros and cons, pros and cons. So if you are working for a company that is allowing you to live in a different country and be a digital nomad, I would say the perks of that would be you don't have to do all of this work to build the business, right? You don't have to worry about maintaining a website or posting on social media if that's an important part of what you would do. And the taxes are a lot easier as well. Much easier. Much, much easier.
Right.
For me, I always valued freedom in life more than anything else. And this translates into a lot of areas of my life, but definitely work. Because I do like exploring and I like experiencing so many things in life. And I found that as long as I can maintain my small business and the freelance work that I do, it makes me happier. And I would rather put in the extra work and learn about setting up an online presence, like the websites, etc., all of these things to at least get a small business kickstarted.
Mm-hmm.
For me, and I also enjoy it. I don't mind it. Some people don't want to do that, though. They're like, I just want minimal effort. I want the taxes to be easier, and I don't blame them. So it kind of just depends on your personality. Taxes are a lot harder when you have your own business.
Yeah, that's
and as
true.
a digital nomad, too, because every country is different in terms of how they tax and the bracket that you're in, etc.
So you pay 100% of your taxes here in Spain, right?
So I've only been in Spain this year, so I haven't started paying taxes yet. And right now I'm in the process of the digital nomad visa. So I have all the paperwork right now. It's all done. And it took not a full year, but it was kind of this on and off, I would say 8 months of, getting the papers and things like that. And it takes a lot longer than people think for certain things that you have to collect. And
The Spanish red tape is insane.
oh, I know. I didn't know this, by the way, when I chose Spain. I learned a lot about how stressful the bureaucracy is here. And it's not just for the nomads or the immigrants here. It's for the people who live here too. They're like, yeah, we don't understand half of the things either. So we're all in the same boat about this. But yeah, so in terms of, the taxes, so I'm actually talking to a lot of different advisors now because there are things, if someone is interested in being an immigrant digital nomad in Spain, if you were to get the digital nomad visa, there is something called the Beckham law that you could apply to, that you could hopefully qualify for, that would put you in a certain tax bracket that would potentially save you a lot of money depending on the tax bracket you are in. However, what I was told, and by the way, you're going to be told different things from like different lawyers and advisors, so that makes it difficult. But if you qualify for this specific law that puts you at a certain tax amount, you are not able to do write-offs for your taxes. So if you have an LLC, a lot of the times when you do your taxes, you'll say these are business expenses, and you can write them off in the taxes. And if you qualify for Beckham law, you can't do that apparently. But if you pay taxes normally in your normal tax bracket, then you can. So I'm right now getting my head around all of that because once you submit the paperwork and if everything works out, you become a legal tax resident. And
I mean, it's not over as such. You can
I think you have to be here. I think it was 182 days before it technically starts. But these are the types of things that are very important to know. They're not necessarily fun. They're not fun at all. But if you're going to be a digital nomad, do that homework for whatever country you're moving to. I didn't know. I didn't know that Spain was going to be a pain in my rear end with the bureaucracy. But now I know. But it's okay. Sometimes you gotta go through the struggles to get what you want.
What would be your top 3 rewards of the digital nomad lifestyle?
I truly feel like a better person because I have learned so much more about the world as I traveled the world. I have met the most amazing people from all of these different countries who give me perspective about life and certain things that I maybe didn't realize how lucky I was to have. And it's not like I grew up on a silver platter. I did not at all. I grew up with very humble beginnings. But even my humble beginnings in comparison to other people I meet in different countries is like they would give anything, right, to sometimes have the opportunities that I had, especially in the United States. So I feel like it made me a warmer person and more humble for sure, and more empathetic. And I was always an empathetic person, but even more so now. So I would say that was the number one reward. I guess it's kind of in 3 parts. So becoming more empathetic, also just becoming a wiser person. You know, me and my friends that do travel a lot, we always joke and say, I learn more about the world, traveling than in school. It's true. I mean, you do. And so I do feel a lot wiser about and cultured because of that. And that's if you travel right, because some people will travel and they don't really put in the effort to get to know the locals and learn their stories and really and live like they do, but that's what I do. That's what I enjoy doing. And just feeling happier.
Right.
Yeah.
You've been to well over 20 countries.
Yeah, for sure. I've been over to 20. I'd have to count. And there are people who have been to so many more countries than I have because, say someone born in Europe, for example, it is a lot easier to travel, right, and see different countries because you are in such close proximity to all these different countries with different languages. And I was always so envious in a way of people who were born in Europe. And I was like, oh man, the vacationing is so much more interesting.
Right.
In the United States, it does cost a lot more to travel and especially if you're in the middle of it, you gotta travel really far just to get to a different country. And then there's Canada is up there. And then, you have a lot of options down there, but it is more difficult and costly. So, I've been to definitely more than 20, not as much as other people that I know, not as many as other people that I know. And I also try not to make it a total numbers game. It is fun though to say once you get to a certain number and it's just like, yes, I reached this. But for me, I really like the kind of experiences where you're there for a good chunk of time, where I could even learn different phrases from their native language, and hopefully make friends there, go on some dates if I feel like it, and, really be one with the country. And you can't do that when you're just there for a short period of time and let me just see all these main tourist spots. And some people do prefer to travel that way, but it's not my style. I like to give it some time.
How do you make sure that you actually make the most of the place and don't get distracted? We have so many distractions today. Just the simple fact of having your phone around, having a list of places to visit. In that country, for instance, you're traveling for just a weekend, and the fact of having so many things to do on your to-do list can sort of distract you from actually enjoying the place, I would say.
Maybe some digital nomads might be in a situation where they can only be there for a very short period of time. I haven't done that. When I do my trips, I'm there for at least 2 weeks.
What's the bare minimum?
I'd say 2 weeks, because you're still going to be working. At least I was. I was always working along the way. So, yeah, I'd say that could at least give you enough time to explore at least more than one city. You could focus on one too, but outside of your pockets of work, you really need to talk to the locals, and you don't need to be fluent in the language, especially if it's a country that is so far removed from anything that you know. But at least learn some of the basics, like hello, goodbye, yes, no, maybe where's the bathroom, or something, things that might come along. And even if you suck at the language, for example, when I was in France, I suck at French. I really do. It's a very difficult
common thing for
language.
Americans.
It is just, the pronunciation is so different than anything I was used to.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but I tried, and
That's
it was
most important.
And it's funny because a lot of people who, maybe they have a specific view, and I don't necessarily know where they were from, the different people that I hear this from, but they would say, sometimes the people in Paris, they could be a little rude. It was like a stereotype, right? And I said, that's so weird. Everyone was so nice to me. Did you try speaking French? And I said, I tried. I mean, I busted it in the worst way, and they would kind of be like, hee hee hee, and giggle, but they appreciated it. And everyone is actually extremely nice. And actually that has been my experience in every country, because I always at least tried to speak something. And so before I would go into a restaurant, can I have, whatever sentence you would use to order, go on Google Translate and do it. Listen to it and attempt.
Yeah. You have to take the first step, actually. Yeah. They want to see proximity. They want to see effort from you as a tourist. If you just come over and then you display this sort of ethnocentrism and, it's like everything revolves around yourself, why are people so different? And then you just don't want to get by, is going to be problematic. So I think in most cases, this is what happens.
And I've seen it. I've seen the type of tourist, in many different places where, they definitely had that about them. And I just never understood it, because I said, then why are you traveling? Why? If you're not interested in learning more about the culture and in really immersing yourself. I suppose just seeing the sights and the food is enough for some people. It's not for me. It's not. No, I said I want to have a more intimate relationship with the countries that I visit. I do.
Right.
One way to put it, I suppose.